Please all rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we got new chairs. Dignity. Dignity.
I want to thank you all coming to this Board of Trustees public session on October 11th. Starting in the beginning, which we always do, we have the Employee of the Month. And, you know, I always talk about the employee being here. And they never seem to want to come. And then I have one with the greatest picture that you've ever seen. And this was when he was all together. I don't know. Yeah, I got to share that picture before you even come up here, John, to get that because.
Abnormality is beautiful. Very appropriate.
You know, we had a going away party for this employee the other night, and as usual, the one thing that you got to say about him is he's got a sense of humor. And, you know, not only does he have a sense of humor, but he takes it pretty well, too. So, you know, I was great honor to present this Employee of the Month to John Forster. Have you ever gotten it before?
No.
He just gave you a check.
John, you gotta hold it up here.
You actually holding it the right side?
It wouldn't matter if it was right side up.
Might look better.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much, and
I had a great time
trustees.
at your party last night. Thanks for
I did
having
too.
us.
Thanks. Yeah. And thanks to the public and to all you guys putting up with me for 30 years. I know it wasn't easy. My wife says that about other things, but but I appreciate it all. So,
Well deserved.
all right.
Despite
Take
the
care,
fact that I
Frank, with the deer.
forgot to go to his party last night, because you got to tell my wife anything that's important, otherwise I just, but I realized that this morning I hired you.
That's right, that's why. You did.
In 1988.
And you're still kicking yourself, right?
Well, we
There was quite a stir at the time.
Yes.
discovered
Back
that
then, too?
he's been through six
6 mayors.
mayors.
But, oh, yeah, really?
Maybe 7, but definitely 6.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Yeah, so, like I say, it was a great run. It's fun working for the village. Sometimes they're tough, but that's part of work, and I enjoyed it. Hopefully did good service for the village. Appreciate everything.
Well, we certainly appreciate you, John. Oh, we should have made him stay for the whole year.
Doesn't get afraid about the deer fence law.
Remember a little joke before we get into the heavy stuff?
Go ahead, yes.
This is our little joke of the week club.
No, it's your joke of the week.
You take full credit for this if this doesn't go right.
Charlie, are you able to zero in on this one?
Oh, no. stuff on that table. Prayer for Grandpa.
Dear Graham, dear God.
Better read it, Bill.
At the bottom, it says,
The red.
Dear God, please send clothes for all those poor ladies on Grandpa's computer.
Well, again, no surprise there. Sorry to say, Bill.
Thank you, Bill, for sharing that with us. As we move on to public comment, and if you could keep your comments down to 3 minutes per speaker, it'd be helpful. First person, John Bennett. You want to wait to the public hearing? Okay. Evelyn Conrad?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Board of Trustees. What I have laid out there is what people need to cover if they're on the Planning Board or the ARB. I don't think they can read those in 4 hours. That's why, of course, they're sort of at the mercy of the consultants they hire, who are not always of the most honorable sort. Now, I have a great concern for 3842 Job's Lane, meaning the courtyard, because a couple of weekends ago at a couple of dinner parties, Bo Robinson was saying that it was all settled. The courtyard's gone. The plan is going through. Now, how do you suppose he knows that? Next. It took 12 years for the predecessor, Mike's predecessor, to clear out 2/3 of the year-round residents of the village. I think it'll take you only another year or two. There are now just a little over 3 dozen year-round residents in the Roscoe area, for example. The only legal houses in that area, of course, are those that were built before 2005, because the ARB violated, surely advised by attorney, the rights of the owners, the rightful owners, violated the Section 10 of Article 1 of the Constitution. I'll start at the top because Nancy, of course, your lawyer, was wrong, as you surely know, when he said that local law can trump state law. No, it goes from the top down, not from the bottom up, except here in the village. So you are in violation of that. You're in violation of the subdivision law, of the real property law, which I've passed out to you. You know it. Every member of a subdivision has the right to enforce the common plan and scheme and the deeds, the covenants, against anyone else. Well, you can't do that if you're not advised of a public hearing, which of course nobody ever has been. The local law that's been enforced was the original one of 4 immediate neighbors only. So this is still going on. And when I mentioned it again to the ARB, whom I have certainly given plenty of documentation, which they then passed to Bo Robinson, who interprets it for them. So it's up to you. And you're wrong if you think that you cannot interfere in a current situation. In fact, you must when there are illegalities. There are plenty of illegalities about 3842. And there are lots of illegalities about Roscoe and about all the local houses that are being torn down and the historic houses that have been taken over. So it's time. It's past time, but it's a must now. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. Rob Coburn?
Thank you, Mayor and Trustees. I'm Rob Coburn, 345 Hill Street. I am a member of the ARB, but I'm here tonight speaking just as a private citizen. I'd sent a letter to you last week. I don't know if you'd all received it. And I'm really here just to be, in the words of Wayne Bruin, whose advice I took in writing that letter, a bit of a squeaky wheel on the issue of traffic safety. And I don't want to read the entire letter, but I think, as you know, I made a presentation to you last November on sort of a comprehensive view, not deep dive, but a comprehensive view of some traffic issues, particularly on the major arteries in the village, and some of the problems that were becoming more prevalent, and a suggestion or request to take a comprehensive approach to really study how to improve it. So that was last November. There have been some improvements in the meantime. I spelled some of those out, but in particular, there's been some new signage put on a couple of roads, Hill Street in particular. There's a new speed indicator sign on Hill Street. And with the chief here, I should say there's been a lot more enforcement, noticeable enforcement in some areas of the village. I'll start with Hill Street, which is where I live. And that has had a big effect, I think. It's reduced speeds in my observations, and it's particularly cut off some of the most egregious speeding, 45, 50 miles an hour and above, seems to be well down. So thank you, Chief. But, and there's an important but, there are still problems. We have the volume issues continuing to grow, which I know we can't really address. It's a regional issue. I'll just give one example of something that has shown up in the last couple of years that I want the public to be aware of. As a resident of Hill Street 5, 6, 7 years ago, I don't think I ever saw a pedestrian or a bicyclist or a family with a stroller waiting to cross the street for more than maybe 10, 20 seconds. And in the last 2 and 3 years in particular, and this summer was worse, noticeably worse than last year. On a daily basis, I would see 3 or 4 times a day a family group, pedestrians or bicyclists, waiting at times for 3 or 4 minutes to cross that road. Now, traffic's supposed to yield to them. But with no stop signs, this is on Hill Street again, no stop signs and no crosswalks and no indication and a wide open road, they just don't. And, you know, the first thing to say is it's a big inconvenience for those pedestrians. If they're walking into town to enjoy Agawam Park or to shop in the village, it sort of puts them in a different mood to have to wait that long to cross traffic. And, but more than that, it's a safety issue. I think in my opinion, we're lucky we haven't had a bad pedestrian or bicycle accident on several of the major roads in the village. So that leads to sort of the to-do, which I put on my letter. There are 3 things in particular. Even without a comprehensive plan, I think there are 3 things that to me remain easily doable and really important. One would be to start on some level of traffic study. It doesn't need to be comprehensive. We don't need to throw everything out there, but something that would help frame the volume issues and some of the worst behaviors and maybe some of the, I hate to say it, but effective failings of the signage that we have. That would be one. 2 would be trying some crosswalks. I can give you a couple locations. I think I spelled them out in the letter on Hill Street. There may be some others. Even one on a trial basis to see if it helps. And improvement of some pavement markings. In particular, from what I've read, we have a lot of bicycle lanes in the village, but the bike icons painted in them are not very visible, and there are not very many of them. And just that visual presence of those bike icons can have a big impact on the consciousness of drivers. So I wanted to be the squeaky wheel and ask if you could pursue any and all of those 3 items.
Rob, before you run away, I went through your letter pretty closely, and it looked like that you had been working with Bill Hattrick on a number of things, and that you felt some of the stuff that you had done in remarking the roads had actually improved traffic.
Well, Hill Street was sort of the focus, and it was in the presentation. I probably, partly because I live there, but also it's the longest stretch. It's the most volumed road in the village in terms of traffic volume. And it's the longest stretch without any stop signs or stop lights. And so some of the worst problems, particularly speeding, happen on that road. And there's a bit of a focus there, and Bill and I did meet with Gary Gillespie. And shortly thereafter, within weeks of the presentation, there had been a redistribution of some speed signs on Hill Street, the addition of, I think, 2 or 3 in different directions. And then about a month or month and a half later, the speed indicator sign was put up heading westbound between Halsey and Moses. And that, coupled with the enforcement, which, as I say in the letter, is never a good long-term solution. Relying heavily on enforcement is not a good solution because they don't have the time to always be there. They can't be everywhere. And it's a negative tone for the village to hit people with a fine as opposed to laying out some expectations and some visual cues that may help them drive better in the first place and not have to get fined. So there has been some improvement. Bill was very helpful with Gary. Gary seemed very responsive to that. I haven't seen the same level of activity on some of the other major arteries. Hampton Road, heading out of the village east, is pretty well marked with stop lights in particular, and the pavement markings seem to be better. I don't know the speeding statistics there, but I still see a lot of speeding on North Main Street. I see a lot of speeding on North Sea Road between Prospect and into the village. And there has been some improvement primarily on Hill Street, which I'm personally grateful for, and it sets the tone, and a lot of cars go through there, so that's very helpful.
But I would ask that you continue to reach out to Trustee Hattrick and see if we can get some more of that stuff going, because it obviously worked.
Well, I do think, a trial crosswalk, and someone will have to opine as to whether there needs to be any notice or approval from the state, but a trial crosswalk somewhere on Hill Street just pavement markings to begin with. It sets a visual cue, and it tells pedestrians where to go safely, and it may reset some expectations.
If you were going to do one of those, where, off the top of your head, where would you do it?
There are 3 locations that I think would be helpful. The most critical one to me is actually going across on the west side of First Neck Lane, going across to the Village Inn. I see a lot of people trying to cross there, going to or from the church, or going to or from heading down to the beach from the Village, Southampton Village Inn, the Southampton Inn. So that would be one location to try. I see a lot of people crossing at the Catholic Church because of the nursery school and other activities and services, or people may be walking out of the village and then over to Whitefields. And then the other one I would say is Halsey Neck Lane. I see an awful lot of families coming from the western part of the village, heading down to the beach on foot or on bike, waiting a long time across from Halsey Neck. So those would be 3 possible locations that I would suggest. And the bike icons, I know manpower is short and we have to have the right painting weather, but for, a couple men for a day or 2 could go through basically all the bike lanes in the village and repaint the icons and paint more of them. And again, even that helps the bicyclists, but it also reminds everyone on the road that there are multiple uses to the road, and the studies have shown that that has the effect of slowing them down.
Thank you.
And as you meet with Bill again, maybe he'll show those nice pictures on his computer.
Closed.
No comment.
Any other public comments? Anybody has a public comment? So moving ahead, we have no board presentations tonight, and we have public hearings. The first one is a CSC acquisition, which I guess we should open it and then adjourn.
And then we're going to adjourn it. Yeah, they're not prepared to address the issue that was raised at the hearing 2 meetings ago.
Okay. So I will make a motion to open the CSC acquisition franchise agreement renewal.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And is there any comments on it? If not, we'll adjourn it to the,
The 23rd of October, subject to them having the language worked out
okay.
to a mutual agreement.
Is that a motion?
I'll make a motion to close the CSC acquisition.
Second?
No, adjourn it.
Adjourn it, excuse me.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the next item is a Layton Avenue parking. So I make a motion to open the Layton Avenue parking hearing.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody here from Layton Avenue that wants to make a comment, or trustees or council?
If you recall, in the summer, you had a public hearing that was focused on Hildreth and Jennings, but also included Layton Avenue, and you were suggesting some modifications there. After all those hearings, you realized that the modifications that you were proposing were probably not going to solve some of the problems. So we revisited that, revised it. So now this would, instead of no parking 12 midnight to 6 a.m. on the north side of the road, which is the entire length, you are going to shift, and on the south side between Hildreth and North Main Street, right now there's parking's prohibited at all times. Based on the comments from the residents and what this board observed, you're proposing to now change that so that there'll be parking allowed on the south side at all times, And no parking at all times along the north side of the road. So you're sort of flipping the existing conditions. As well as no parking within 20 feet of the intersections, as you've been doing, and there is actually some signage up there now.
I think the primary purpose that we were looking to do that is to the parking on the north side. They were infringing on most of the driveways and driveway access there, which was very difficult.
And also Layton Avenue, their project has been completed, it has been repaved, and they've restriped in there, so it looks like they got a few more parking spots out of it. I don't know how much more, but they got more parked along the fence.
I have a question on this. I understand the Layton Avenue North from North Main to east to Elm Street. We're changing that now to no parking at all times. Okay, then Layton Avenue South from Hildreth Street east to Elm Street, no parking from 12 midnight to 6 a.m. Okay. So basically...
We're not changing that. That's what it is currently.
Okay. So basically, we're just opening up the area in front of the condo.
You're opening it up there and then prohibiting the parking on the north.
I know that when they were here, they had asked, which I thought was a good idea, if we could stripe that there for parallel parking, because basically, people just pull in and don't really, watch where they're parking, so someone could really be taking up 2 spots. I think it's a really good idea for us to stripe that.
You could do that.
Yep.
That doesn't need to be put in here, that would just redo.
No,
No,
you
but
need
I'm
to
just-
adopt a
that's
law
just-
that would allow the parking, then you can
And then you
stripe
could
it
stripe
accordingly.
it.
Right.
Okay, another option.
Okay.
Yeah, that had been discussed, you're right, by the residents.
Right.
Given the degree of interest in the last time, I'm surprised that there's nobody here to speak on this. You might want to
Probably
adjourn
don't.
Yeah.
this for one meeting and see if
Yeah, maybe we should
anybody
do that.
I don't know if
does
it's
have
the
any.
weather or something, surprising.
Also,
This also solves the safety issues that the first responders had, because when cars were parked on both sides, it was very hard to get through, particularly when there were turns.
All right, so adjourn it till
Well,
next
is there
meeting.
any comments from anybody that's in the audience?
No one's here.
Okay. Well, it's a shame nobody's here, because they all were pretty interested in it. But I'll make a motion to adjourn the Layton Avenue parking to the 10:23 meeting.
Second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
With street parking.
And I'll make a motion to open the Hildreth Street parking area.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
This is also a continuation of the issues that were raised back in the summer. We went back and revisited after all the comments that were raised, and this proposal is only to restrict parking between 12 midnight and 6 a.m. on one side of the road, and this proposal is on the east side. And on the west side, there would be no parking just within 20 feet of the intersection, which if you go out there, that's currently how it's posted. Otherwise, there would be parking on the west side, which is where,
With no
particularly in front of the condominiums, and then continuing to the south.
I thought we were planning to allow for 4 parking spots at that corner.
This
That's
allows
what-
parking
All along,
for the
yeah.
entire length on the
Yeah.
west side.
So it is allowing for that.
Well, no, it says
No
Within
parking at
20
all
feet.
times.
no
Only
park.
within 20 feet of the intersection.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So
Okay,
you get,
okay.
which is the standard 20-foot setback.
I'm confused.
In other words, there's no parking within 20 feet of
the corner.
the corner.
Oh, I see. Okay, it's just spelled out for that. So then the rest of the street on the
Street
west
is
side could be parking?
Parking.
Correct.
Okay.
And proposing, we're adding the midnight to 6 restrictions for the east side
Right.
only. Okay.
So basically, you're saying they can park on the east and the west side, but on the east side from 12
During the
midnight
day.
to 6
During the day.
a.m., they can't?
Correct.
See, I have a problem with being able to park on both sides of the street. I think that is a real problem within our community, and people constantly are saying to me, you've got to do something. Trucks are parked on this side, trucks are parked on that side. You're driving down the road, it's like an obstacle course, and it's dangerous. And I have brought up a couple of times that I really feel that we need to have a plan, and the plan should be something that should go something like this. North-south running roads should have parking allowed on one side and one side only, and east-west running roads should have parking on one side, should allow parking on one side. Because if you don't spell that out, they're all over the place, and that's when the danger occurs.
And this is a particularly tricky street because it's a much narrower street than any other one in the village. So when parking
not
is
Fordham.
allowed on both sides of the street, it precludes two cars from being able to pass each other, and any other traffic problems ensuing from that.
So, I mean, I really have a problem with that, having it available on both sides of that street. I have a problem with us not spelling out on all these other streets throughout the village how we have to organize this. We have to organize this in such a way that the public is less vulnerable by people parking on both sides of the street. Sometimes you can't even get through. So, and I've had people come up to me and talk about it, and now, of course, during the summer, it was very bad. Now it's a little less, but still, I've just had somebody talk to me this past week. So I think we should consider something like that.
Well, we definitely have to consider something, but it also has to be, you have to be mindful of the streets, because not every street is exactly the same, width-wise and so forth, and you have to also
Well, that's why somebody had to take a
But the
good look at
residents,
it.
you have to take it, like, before we arbitrarily pick which side it should be, I think the residents should have a say in that. But what this law that Wayne drafted up thus far, with John here, has been presented. The issue is about the overnight parking. So that's what this is addressing now. I think if we want to tweak it further going down the road, we can. But what this is addressing is the previous meetings, this has been the concern from what I understand was the overnight parking and reducing that, not so much both sides yet.
Well, I think one of the things when we had this hearing and Hildreth came up, Jennings, they weren't interested in any of this, but when Hildreth came up, the people from the condo wanted the 4 spots by the corner of Layton and Hildreth.
They have.
When we had talked about the no parking from 12 midnight to 6 a.m. on Layton from Hildreth to Elm Street, the reason for that was because we felt some of the bar people were coming down and parking there and then walking over. And clearly, Hildreth said, we don't feel any of that over there. So, by putting in 12 midnight to 6 a.m., what's the point? I mean, that's, if they're not feeling that over there.
Well, that's a good question. I asked that to begin with, but we've gotten this far with it. And the gentleman sitting here is probably going to elaborate why he thinks it should be midnight to 6 restrictions. Because I don't want any I don't think there should be any, but that's what we've got to this point.
I think there should be no parking on one side of that street. That's basically the bottom line. I mean, if there's going to be, well, we have people who disagree with any parking on the street there, so...
And if you're going to pick which side it should be, then you need more people here to discuss it who live on that street,
Right.
in my opinion.
John, do you have
But
a
let's-
comment?
Counselor?
I've been very, very frustrated by this whole process, and I'm the only one who lives on that street all the time. And I was very frustrated by the fact, John Bennett, actually, that I heard back at the last time that, Bennett's the only one who wants this. Somehow these letters didn't get into the file. Hopefully you all got a copy of this letter today. I hand-delivered it, made sure you had it, okay? And the tax map shows,
John, can you just tell us what the letter is?
the letter was dated today. It submits letters that have previously been submitted. For some reason, it didn't go into the file. What you see on Hildreth is 8 people on Hildreth have letters saying the parking situation is untenable. I'm the one who started the petition for it, and the reason I said no parking from midnight till 6, because what I would prefer is modified by the understandable concerns of the condominium owners, 4 spaces on the north side, on the northwest side of Hildreth, and no parking, period. But I thought, take it in steps and just ask for no parking midnight to 6 a.m. So what you have here, though, is all of the people on Hildreth, 8 of the people on Hildreth, myself and 7 other people, asking for no parking from midnight to 6 p.m., both sides. Quite frankly, if you're going to say no parking just on one side, I would withdraw my entire request for any changes. Because all it's going to do is create a situation where you have additional ugly signage and it doesn't do anything about the problem. Because what the problem is, and I'm chagrined by the fact that somehow people have been able to ignore the zoning laws and put it on the burden on the street. It's very interesting. The people who refuse to sign the letter on Hildreth are all people who have done the following. They have taken their driveway, they have put a fence halfway down the driveway so that their garage can be converted to a man cave or an illegal guest house. And therefore, although they all have ample space on their lots to provide for on-site parking, as is required under the village law, as I do on my parcel, as all these people who have signed these letters talking about the untenable position, as they all do. So particularly down at the southerly end of Hildreth, you have people who have taken their garages, they've cut off the driveway, you've seen it, they cut the driveway off, so not only, and then they've converted their garage, sometimes legally or sometimes to a pool house. I don't know how that happened, because you have to demonstrate if you want to convert an accessory structure to another type of legal use that you've still provided the parking, but nevertheless, this happens. So they do not park on their property where they have space to park. So I'm scratching my head trying to figure out why this disobedience of the zoning law is being rewarded, and why these people who have signed this letter, 8 of them, not just me, 8 of them, are being burdened by a situation that has been caused by people ignoring the fact that the village code says you're supposed to park on your property. So I'd ask for some sort of relief on this. I will tell you, if you're going to just make it no parking on one side, it's not going to do anything but exacerbate the situation. Who knows? Maybe people will start double parking like I used to have to in Manhattan and Queens. I mean, this is Southampton. It's not a western suburb. It's not New York. It's not Queens. It's not Brooklyn. I should be able to drive down this residential street and have no parking on the street. I know I'm going to be coming at some time for that. But certainly, as a first step, midnight to 6 p.m., it's not appropriate. The remedy is to have people park like I do on my property. And you go down there and you'll see, down here, particularly at the southern end, people have cut off their driveway, so you can't park in the garage where you're supposed to park. You can't even park in half of the driveway in sequence. And that's not fair, just not fair. So I come out of my driveway sometimes, and the gentleman across the street from me not only has cars parked up along the street, he has cars parked in front of his driveway. In front of his driveway. So that and our driveways line up. I have to be very careful getting out of my driveway so I don't hit his car across the street. He's blocking his own driveway. So I would ask you again, if all you're going to do is say no parking on the east side, 12 to 6, I would withdraw my request for the wall, because it doesn't work. You've got to do it on both sides. I understand that you should give, this is just understanding reality. Right now, typically there are 4 cars parked there. That's rarely do I see anything more than 4 cars. So stripe those spaces, give them the spaces. And I will tell you that even though they resurfaced their back parking lot and made the dumpster smaller, I went in the other night when presumably everybody was home from work, half the spaces are used. Half the spaces are used. So, there's a room, it's just a little bit of inconvenience, if I'm parked in my driveway, and my kid comes home, I don't tell him to park on the street. I say to him, you got to move your car, or I'll go out. If I'm feeling particularly, whatever, I'll go out and move the car for him. But we all know this. But I'm sorry, this is the sort of things that, as a good citizen and as a good neighbor, you should do, and not impose it on other people on the block.
I'd like to do more research on this because a number of people have approached us and said, we seem to have more cars on our street. Where's this coming from? Someone allegedly said that the curb cut law was changed several years ago so that everybody parks in the front because they want a pool in the back and they want a garage. I don't have enough examples to really understand that, but because they're all parking in the front, it's basically just one lane, and they can't get in and out, is what I'm told, in the front and on the side. To your point, there's only a one-lane parking possibility on the side of a house or in the front, and that's stopping people from parking on their property. It's what I'm being told. I don't understand
Well,
it.
the only changes to the law were that you could now park, if you're 10 feet and you're 10 feet, and you're appropriately buffered, the building department can give you a permit to park in your front yard. That's out of the right-of-way, on your property. And the only other change is they reduce the size, the width of a lot that's necessary for a circular. Right, but it's all parking on the person's property. If anything, that should alleviate the issues.
But I'm told it's not, because people see a car parked in that front circular drive, and because they don't know when that person's coming or going, they don't want to park on the circular drive behind them. That's what I'm hearing. I don't know if it's accurate or not.
That's just an inconvenience. Like everybody has to get out and move their car for the other family member sometime.
In the small lots, you can only have so much of a driveway, and they're narrow driveways. So you're right. If cars are stacked in the driveway, because that's the only place they can be, you have to get out and move them. And that's the inconvenience that people don't like, but they have a small lot.
I'm sorry, that my response to that, Nancy, is too bad. But here, what you have here is people have taken what the code says is where you're supposed to put your car, and they've converted these garages to something that no longer has the ability to house cars. And then please, I beg you, go down the street. You'll see, down here in particular, there's fence after fence where they cut off the driveway. And they put grass pavers down. No cars ever drive over that. It's become part of their backyard, and it's supposed to be their driveway to allow for parking and to give access to where the parking is supposed to happen, in the garage and on the other part of the driveway. So again, if you're just going to do it on one side of the street, I would ask that the consideration being withdrawn. I think the thing to do is to give the Leighton Avenue people the 4 spaces that have traditionally been used there, and then no parking on both sides. I know that might require a reposting, but it just becomes an absolute penalty. And there is a remedy for it, and that remedy is to ask the people to pay the zoning law, like I do. Thank you. I went over my 3 minutes, but.
Nope, no problem.
You're exempt.
It's part of the hearing. Public hearing.
Again, 8. I know, Rich, you were concerned because it seemed that I was the only one that wasn't, but there are 8 people on the street.
I see that now, yes.
It's not easy. A lot of people are like, I don't want to get involved, but 8 people, I suggest that there are people concerned about this. So thank you as always for your time and consideration.
Any other comments? Rob?
There was an allusion to the fact that parking and traffic go hand in hand a little bit, so I have an interest in this. I agree generally with what John just said, and I would say I spent a lot of time in East Hampton Village over the last 4 years during the day, and they have some advantages over us. They tend to have wider streets, which is nice in the village, so it would be less of a problem if people parked on the street. The fact is they don't. I don't know if it's cultural, I don't know if it's in the code, but I've never gone through East Hampton Village and had to go around a landscaping truck or navigate cars parked on both sides. It just doesn't happen. So they're doing something there in terms of either their code or their enforcement that is probably worth looking at, because you just never run into that issue there in a very similar grid village.
So the other thing, I'm sorry, I wanted to add is that it also makes it.
You got to come up here, Charlie. Will.
It makes it
Throw darts
difficult.
at me.
It makes it difficult for snow plowing and for street cleaning,
Right.
because so many times I'll come out in the winter and, you can't blame the snow plow. You can't plow into the cars or the street cleaner. So I mean, even if you wanted to say, start with no parking 12 to 6, I don't know what time the guys from the highway get on, but
Early.
it often come out and there's been no way to either plow or clean the streets. So anyway, thank you. I just wanted to add that. I didn't want to forget that.
Any other comments?
Please. I'm sort of a little hesitant about legalizing this on-street parking. I go up Halsey Street a lot of the time to cut out the village, and that has been appalling. It has been an obstacle course. And we are supposed to park our cars on our own property. I wish you'd look into enforcing that on Layton and some of the other streets. I have just one neighbor who tends to have a lot of subleasers, and so occasionally the cars are on the street. I face a very bad curve. It's very annoying, and that's just one neighbor. So think of it on a street like Halsey Street. So I wonder if you shouldn't take more time to, don't legalize a bad thing is my point. I've been listening to what's happening here, and I happen to agree with both of these gentlemen. It's a very annoying and dangerous thing, the street parking.
I just wanted to organize it because it's happening. You have trucks out all day long that are servicing different neighborhoods, and that's the problem because they're parking on both sides. I just wanted to organize it so that during the day, if they had to park, they have to park on one side, not on both sides of
The
it.
trucks are not going to do that.
Well, if it's enforced, they will.
They go where they have to work there.
Yeah, but they don't go on the property where they have to work, which is a problem. So,
Well, I know it's a big problem. The point is that I hate to see it legalized because it is just a mess. That doesn't
I
happen.
want to organize the mess. That's what I'm trying to do, is organize the mess.
So I think that my general impression is that all of you want to take another look at Hilder Street?
Fine.
Okay. Should we then close it and,
You can close it. In either case,
Well, let me ask
if you're
you-
going to amend it, we got to renotice.
Well, what are you looking to amend? What John wants amended? I mean, what's unclear? Because we've gotten to this point with it, so what's unclear?
well, my general impression is that
I mean, not from you, but
if-
anyone else.
if you amended it, you would amend it for parking on both sides of the street.
From 12 to 6 or all hours?
I would be more inclined to do 12 to 6, yeah,
On both sides.
both sides.
How did we
Except
get-
for the first 100-plus feet
Except for that.
Right.
condominium.
How do we get to this version?
As you just described, I need to revise it, and then you need to schedule it and notice it for the next.
Well, I don't know, but how did this, I mean, you set this up. How did you arrive at
Came
this?
based on the discussions that came out of the meeting, and there was no clear consensus, but I knew this would at least provoke the discussion, which I think is what we have.
But if you had parking, once again, if you're allowing parking on both sides of the street during the day and not from 12 midnight to 6 a.m., that's a problem. The street's too narrow for that.
Excuse me?
I said, Michael said he's inclined to have parking on both sides of the street during the day, but not from 12 midnight to 6 a.m. And I said, well, that's a problem because the road is not wide enough to have parking on both sides, plus through traffic through there. I don't think it is.
I don't think you should have parking on the street, so.
I know you don't.
Why not treat it like Layton? And have one side no parking, and one side parking all the time near the condos, and the other part of that side of the street parking just during the day.
The issue with that is which side you do. I'm going to answer what the
Use the
reason.
condos
No,
as an
I'm going to explain to you. The reason Layton was an easier one to address is because the north side has all the curb cuts from the homes and the driveways, and they were being blocked. They weren't safe because I couldn't see pulling out of the driveway.
We also
Layton Ave-
heard from them.
Well,
too.
yeah, no, of course. But moving it to the other side, there are no curb cuts. That's why that was an easier thing to designate. That helped.
That was smart.
The reason to designate it to the south side of, in front of the condos is because it's not interfering with any curb cuts. The north side is where all the residences are. So that's why I know the one side, but on Hildreth, since we're talking about it now, they both have curb cuts. They're both residential. They both have driveways. So the discussion has to be which side is going to be designated as the no parking, in my opinion.
But there are curb cuts on the eastern end, on the south side of Layton, and you're allowing parking 12 to 6 there. Between the curb cuts, there are 7 or 8 houses from Hildreth over to Elm Street. So why not use the condo as an anchor, have the permanent parking around the condo on both streets, and then on that same side of each street, allow parking 12 to 6, and on the other side of the street, allow no parking?
I appreciate that.
Robert,
I want to hear
no
from somebody
parking
from
from
Hildreth
12 to
Street, though,
6.
not from Hill Street.
Yeah, I understand.
That's all.
If I may, I don't see any designated need for parking on Hildreth other than the 4 reasonable spaces which have historically happened on Layton. Demonstrate for me the need to it. I beg you, drive down the street and look at those, every one of those. It's a matter of convenience and a matter of people taking away what they're supposed to have, which is a place to park on site.
I just ask one question.
Excuse me?
I mean, again, devil's advocate.
Right.
We implement that, let's just say.
Right.
So now where do these cars go?
They do what they're supposed to do, what
Well,
I do
well,
with
you
the
said they
other
don't
8
have the room
members.
to do it,
Excuse me?
so but
Well, I guess what
apparently-
they're going to have to do, Rich, it's very simple. What they're going to have to do is going to have to remove the gate that they put up in the middle of their driveway and allow themselves to have another 2 or 3 or 4 cars down there. It's really remarkable. You have to drive down there. People have just cut off their driveways.
John, do you think this is a problem just on your street because you happen to have a man cave street, or is this an issue across the village?
I don't know, because it's interesting. I'm sort of annoyed because I drive down most streets in the village of Southampton and you can't park there. You can't park there. And it's rare that you have a multifamily situation such as you do on Layton. And I think, when I heard the people come in here, and I was like, yeah, okay, all right, that makes sense. That even though I think they could probably put the parking in the back because they don't use half the spaces, you got to bow to reality. So I think 4 spaces down there is fine. But I don't know who else has to park on Hildreth, period. I haven't seen a demonstrated need for it other than people standing up and saying, I'm inconvenienced. Well, a lot of things in life inconvenience you, but you're supposed to be a good citizen.
Can I just say, John, and I'm not against
Yeah.
what you're saying, but it's just the practical thing. You invite 3 or 4 couples over to your house for dinner some night.
Yep. Do it all the time. You know what I do? I have 4 sets of brother and sister-in-laws, okay? And for some reason, they tend to end up at my house during the holidays. I park my cars in the garage, and then I stack cars in front of my garage, and they all get into my property. It's a pain in the neck, because if someone wants to leave early, usually one of the families has to get out and do like the fire drill and get people out. But it's very, very doable. Very doable.
I see throughout the village when people have guests over, they do spill out onto the street because they don't have a choice.
They can go to Steve and get a letter, like everybody in the estate area does, and get a letter where you say you have a dispensation, a parking acceptance.
But John, you mentioned that people actually have parking and they've artificially created
different structures out of their parking area.
Well, it's two things, if I may. Say this is their driveway, okay, and this is the parcel, and this is their driveway. You can see it on my street. They've done two things. They've taken their garage, and they've taken out the ability to park there. So there's two cars usually. And then they put a gate here in the driveway, right here, and then they put these grass pavers, and they park their cars, one or two cars here, and then the rest they park on the street, because they don't, I don't understand, but that's what they do. And so you've taken the ability, in my example, on all these, to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cars. And this has been their own choice. But you know something? Choices have consequences. And the consequences shouldn't fall on these other people, 8 people on the street, who do what they're supposed to do. My garage would make a very nice guest house. It has wood shingles on it. It's beautifully designed to look like my house. It would make people look at me and they say, "Is that a guest house?" That's my garage. You know, but it's remained my garage because that's what it's supposed to be.
Is it a 2-bed garage or a 3?
It's a 2-bed garage.
I'm kidding.
Very good, Bill. But, you know, and I'm not, it's because you take your cars off the street. Anyway, that's, I've said enough. You've been very generous with your time, so thank you. But I would ask either at a minimum that you say, read through the law to have 4 spaces for the apartments and then no parking overnight on both sides. I mean, ideally, no parking, but I don't know, because they will to get there.
Any other comments?
I was only going to add to that you can work it out with your neighbors when you know you're going to have more cars than you can park on the street. I think that's just a common courtesy. I mentioned the fact that I was unhappy about the cars of that one neighbor. Guess what? They are now parking on their driveway. It does mean they have to go move the car, come back in and all that. Well, too bad. I think that's the right thing to do. I just would like to see you legalize something that's...
No. So my impression is that we need to go back to the drawing boards on Hilder Street. So I'll make a motion to close the Hilder Street parking.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then we'll have to readdress it. That was good. We needed the input.
Payback. Thanks for your work there, Counselor. Let's tear it up.
No Yankee game, so.
Well, you could stay then.
Yeah.
But it says,
I might start to comment on something else.
Okay, yeah. Next, we have a hearing on the discharge of firearms. So I make a motion to open the hearing on the discharge of firearms.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
So this law arose out of your hearings on deer fences and part of your examination of deer management. And the first thing that was realized that your current discharge of firearms law actually is not consistent with the state law. Currently, our code prohibits the discharge of firearms within 500 feet of any street or highway or any dwelling or building occupied by a person as a dwelling. The state law allows hunting with a bow and arrow within 150 feet. And so this came up in your deer management discussions, deer fences. So this proposal is to clarify our law, but also allow it to be consistent with the state laws with respect to a bow and arrow, so that you can discharge a bow and arrow within 150 feet of a dwelling and other aspects that are clarified in the law.
Do we have any comments? Any comments from the public? Any comments from the trustees?
That it's a necessary step to move forward on it, if we want to use the gentleman sitting in the back.
Yeah, and and a step above that too is that we really are taking our discharge laws and now making them adhere to what the state discharge laws are, which the state had recently changed a couple of years ago. So it's not, we aren't opening it to the Wild West or anything. So, with no further comments,
Anybody from the public?
anybody? I asked, I think. Anybody?
The public want to mention on this? You have anything to add to it, Chief, or you good?
I'm just laughing and thinking to myself, our deer are so smart, they suddenly will be hanging out at churches and playgrounds.
It probably will be.
They'll migrate to the churches and playgrounds and commercial buildings.
So I'll make a motion to accept the discharge of firearms law,
I think
which
you need
is...
to close the hearing.
I'll close it. Close the hearing on the discharge of firearms.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'll make a motion to adapt the discharge of firearms, which would be local law number...
I believe it's 14.
14.
Is the year. Second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Trustee Yaz?
Aye.
Trustee Allen?
Aye.
Mayor Irving?
Aye.
Trustee McCann?
Aye.
Trustee Hattrick?
Aye.
So moved.
Okay.
Aye.
Next, we have the deer fence law, so I'll make a motion to open the deer fence law hearing.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any comments from the public?
Good evening. My name is Franklin Treader. I'm a condo owner at Whitefield. Speaking as a taxpayer, I've spoken before. I want to be optimistic. Thank the trustees for passing the deer fence law. Be hopeful. Last time I spoke, talked about the fact that the landscaping was originally done by Olmsted, who had done Central Park, and it's a catastrophe as a result of the deer. And I had made available to the trustees a number of treatises from the Cornell Extension in Riverhead, talking about the fact that a 6-foot fence won't do anything, and that if you're going to keep the deer out, you need an 8-foot fence. And it was obvious that it wasn't just Whitefield, that's, I sometimes call it Deerfield. Many properties in the village are impacted by that. But since I appeared last time, I noticed an article in the New York Times, which I want to refer to and give copies to the trustees. I'll wait a moment till it's in front of you. I'll just refer to a portion of it. Problem with Lyme disease and ticks, not going to surprise you or anybody, but this caught my attention because of the photograph in the middle of the article with a sign that says, "Warning, beware of ticks." And the heading below the article, below the photograph, says, "A warning about ticks in the grass at Shinnecock Hills Golf Club in Southampton, New York." And that got my attention. I hope that that would get your attention. And this article emphasizes the health issue of the deer fence law. And I've highlighted, and says about 30,000 cases of Lyme disease are reported in the Centers for Deer Control and Preservation each year, making it the most commonly reported vector-borne illness in the United States. And down below it says Lyme disease was first recognized in the mid-1970s after a cluster of adults and children in Lyme, Connecticut started experiencing symptoms of arthritis. Additional symptoms may include fever, headache, fatigue, and rash. And lastly, I wanted to emphasize the paragraph that says Lyme disease is usually handled with a short course of antibiotics, but without treatment, infections can spread to the heart, the nervous system, and cause serious problems. Additionally, some patients experience symptoms even after taking antibiotics, which the CDC refers to as post-treatment Lyme disease symptoms. What we're asking for is the ability to use our property. You're talking about parking and things. Children who go on the grass, landscapers who go on the grass. This is a very serious problem. We have deer all over the place. The 6-foot fence we have is doing nothing. We need that 8-foot fence in a hedge. I again request that you give it serious consideration and hopefully adopt that statute. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Good evening, members of the board. Katerina Grinkov, 2 Milithan, 51 Hill Street, Southampton. Just would like to request that this board moves forward with enacting the local law. It has been a very long time. We've been considering this proposal since June 25th, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So we would really encourage you at this time, now that we enacted or voted successfully on the bow and arrow shooting setback, if we could proceed with the deer fence law. That would be great. Thank you.
Any comments from the board?
Well, I have a comment. I mean, my concern, since we did bring in a professional person who does this, I think he's here, and his recommendation was not to do the deer fence right away. His recommendation, because he says it just moves it from property to property. So my concern is, could we thin the herd first before we adopt this law? Could we get going on thinning the herd? Maybe by the spring, we may feel that we're in a position to do it at that point. It's just my thoughts.
Well, one of the difficulties is that the deer season started on the 1st, so
Right.
you know, we're a little behind the 8 ball on it.
Well, it's through January, so we could start now.
We certainly, you know, my feeling is that personally, is that deer fences are not the way to control deer. And I've been reading extensive reports from the state of New York on deer management for both upstate counties, Suffolk County and parts of Nassau County. And continuously they refer to the fencing as not an option.
Right.
You know, that they honestly feel that culling their herds and hunting them is the way to go. And I will say generally, wild game are very responsive to hunting or any kind of that kind of pressure on them. And usually the chances are that you will see much less of them if they're hunted.
Can I just say one thing? It seems to me that the real key to a deer fence is that it's got to be concealed by some other kind of shrubbery and therefore isn't visible. And yes, I guess you can say that you're concentrating the problem elsewhere, but deer really raise, certainly in a place like Southampton Village, having flower gardens is not something that is a rarity, and it's just a killer to come out on a morning, which I know happened to us 2 or 3 years ago, that suddenly, and you see the footprints, they leaped over a 4-foot-high gate and said thank you, you know, and hate the whole damn place. Anyhow, as long as the fences are adequately concealed so that they're not I mean, looking, I'm in favor of doing it, but
I just feel that, go through this entire village and drive around and see how many people have privet, hedge on their property that is taller than 8 feet. Almost everyone. I mean, I live on a street, I have a little piece of property. My hedges have to be taller than 8 feet. And so, some of the hedge has fence in it, not an 8-foot fence, but a wire fence in the middle of it, and they can't get through that. So, I know you have an issue where you live, but I know you also have hedge over there, and your hedge is pretty tall.
The hedge is the same. We have a 6-foot fence that's useless. But I'm listening to you, and I'm just asking, my understanding is there's no legislation in the village code about the height of hedges.
I think Charlie's going to want you to come up here, up to the mic.
I'm sorry. I'm not an expert. I know counsel will correct me like my wife does, but I think there's no provision on the height of hedges. So the fact that there are higher hedges, there may very well be, but it's not a problem. But the hedge doesn't stop the deer. The point is that the deer fence statute buries the wire fence, which is literally becomes invisible, in the hedge. So aesthetically, it's fine. The talk about the bow and arrow and Robin Hood's attack and so forth, I was talking to one of the 2 secretaries in the building department who lives east somewhere, and she has a couple of acres. And she said they had the culling, and it was very effective for a year, maybe 2. And now they're trying to get it. It doesn't do it. The point that I'm trying to emphasize on behalf of Whitefield, but elsewhere in the village, you're depriving the property owner of a right to protect their property health-wise. Nobody has roses anymore. We used to have a house on Halsey Neck. We put in the statute of limitations is run. I admitted this before. We had a deer fence, and we had an 8-foot deer fence, and it worked perfectly. And the roses, my wife was able to restore the roses. It's not fair, just like this other presentation about the parking. Why would you want to deprive people who want to use their property? People have grandchildren come to Whitefield and they're walking around in the grass. That article is startling. That killing the deer with bows and arrows is not going to solve that problem. You know what you do? The golf course would hire 6 archers and follow a foursome and kill deer. We have families of deer. We ought to be charging them. So the fact that you'd like to hit them with bows and arrows, both statutes are compatible. You should not, because you'd like to kill the deer, and a lot of people I think are opposed to that, deprive homeowners from the right to protect their property, both aesthetically for the landscaping and very importantly because of the health. The New York Times puts a photograph in there of a neighboring golf course. That should get your attention. That's not going to be solved by people, and you're going to hire someone, that's fine. You're going to have people, you've got to go on the roof, you've got to get their permission. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to come close. An 8-foot fence that you can't see will let homeowners at least have a chance. Otherwise, the deer are going to win.
Okay. One of the objections I have on the fences is not the sightliness, because you can hide it, you're 100% right, is really twofold. One, fences are not selective at all. They'll stop migration of deer, but they'll also stop migration of everything else. And that I have a problem with. And the other aspect of the fences is usually goes along with your fence is a big gate. And the worst thing I can see is this community, which I've known for so many years, and everybody's been so open and and always willing to pitch in, is rows of houses with these closed 8-foot gates. And it's just something I don't like.
I was quite surprised to learn when I accompanied my friend to the doctor's office who was recently diagnosed with Lyme disease, that mice and red robins are carriers of ticks. And I don't know how you manage keeping a bird off your property or a mouse off your property, but I also am concerned about the deer being driven to other people's properties and to the general roadways. And I have great sympathy, and I looked at your beautiful gardens, but I don't know if there's a way you could put a fence, a clear fence around those gardens. Would there be any other option?
I could speak, I don't need to try and take over the meeting. I'd like to respond to that, but I wanted to say one thing about what the mayor has said. Again, subject to council. As of right, you can have an 8-foot gate. Nothing to do with the deer fence law. That's what's in there now. So if you're saying you don't want 8-foot gates, which they're all over the village, that's a whole different thought. Then you've got to change the existing statute before this whole problem existed. I was surprised when I found out that we needed permission to do an 8-foot fence. We didn't need permission to do an 8-foot gate. So it's not relevant to what we're asking. Your idea, which you mentioned, maybe even in the newspaper a couple of sessions ago, and my wife said, well, why don't we do this? You could have 6 inches wherever the fox or whatever little animals concern you. And when I was talking to John Forster, the swimming pool fences are right down to the ground. You have to have a pool around the fence, and those little animals that you're worried about are blocked by those fences. Those fences can't have a little opening in the bottom because I guess a little child could crawl under there and get to the pool. But with respect to the deer fence, if that's a real concern, then the fence will never be more than 8 feet from the ground. But you could have an opening of 6 inches, 8 inches, whatever the agricultural wizards advise. Those little animals can go there. That's not an excuse for not keeping out the deer. That birds do it and other things, I assume that's true. But the most prevalent one are the deer. You just read that statute. Why that fence and why that sign is there is because it's the deer that's doing it. And I guess you can get it from mice and other things. That doesn't detract. You can't stop the birds from flying in, but you can stop the deer with an 8-foot deer fence. That's invisible.
Counselor, what's the current law? 6 foot, right? We allow a 6-foot fence?
6-foot fence, 4 foot in front.
What would this, refresh me please, what is proposing, 8 foot?
You can have up to a maximum 8 feet.
On the sides?
On all sides.
No, in front too?
So long as it's screened by a hedge. It's got to be a certain material, so on and so forth.
Well, I mean, the fact that we allow 6-foot hedge, I mean, on the side parts anyways, the sides and rear, we allow it. I mean, I have a hedge and I have some wire fence within it, but that's to keep my dog from escaping when it was a puppy. So that is common. So I don't see a problem with going from 6 to 8 because that's what people do already in their hedges along the sides and the back. So am I correct in saying that the controversy is really allowing it to now go in front?
No, I think the issues are, I think you've been debating them. The mayor's indicated his concerns.
Correct, as far as...
I think the issue with the deer fence, it's been well documented in a number of things and by the public, is you have to have 8 feet is the minimum. And you needed 4 sides. You can't let them in any location. The deer are pretty smart, so including the gates.
I think a lot of the people who are looking to put it up already have tall hedges already there. We've unfortunately become a hedgerow society, so personally, I don't have a problem adding another 2 feet to it.
You're not promoting hedges to occur 8 feet in height by this law. The hedge
But
is
you would have
already
to.
there.
That's what I'm saying. So the hedge is already there, so whether it's a 6-foot fence, 4-foot fence, or 8-foot fence in there, to me, doesn't really matter. So I personally, for that reason, I don't have a problem making it 8 foot, with the law as it is, because it's going to be concealed, and I think a lot of people who are interested in putting it in, this property in particular already has about a 10, 12-foot hedge in the front. Perimeter. So I don't, but I also am aware of maybe blocking out other animals and creatures and so forth, but, I did think we had a discussion and maybe some compromise with some people in the audience, doing it as a 1-2 punch, changing the discharge laws and combining it with the deer fence. So putting the two together and see how it goes, I have no problem.
Any other comments?
I just would really like to go ahead with the culling of all these herds, so many herds all over the village, and see how we make out with that. And then talk about this.
Okay. Would you like, as a group, to bring this to vote, or do you?
I'd vote yes for it. That's not for me to decide. I have no problem bringing it to a vote, but that's really your decision.
Bill?
I'm willing to vote.
Okay. So I'll guess I'll make a motion to,
If you're going to vote, first of all, we have, through time, we've had a couple different versions considered for your alternatives. You remember at one point there were comments about whether it should occur in the smaller zoning districts or not, and I think after further consideration, the board said if you're going to do it, you're going to do it across the board and not make a distinction between the smaller zones or not. We did have another clause that was to be considered on deer fences on agricultural lands only, being that you're allowed to have a deer fence only if you have a hedge. Well, a lot of our agricultural lands, you're not necessarily want to promote a hedge being planted just so they could hide the deer fence, when in fact there you're actually supposedly protecting bona fide agricultural crops. So this was this other paragraph we drafted creates sort of an exception for the as far as the planting of the hedging and so on. So if the board's going to consider that version, you would close the public hearing tonight. You have received a letter from the Suffolk County Planning Commission indicating it's a matter of local determination. So you can act on this tonight if you so choose. I will finalize that version in a form of a notice of adoption for the minutes if you do so.
So the version you would lay out would give the agricultural exemption?
It includes that.
Includes.
Yes. I don't know what's on the table.
It doesn't have the agricultural.
What's ever in your book? Same as in your book.
Is that the red highlighted thing you have in yours?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't see a red highlight.
That's not the one on the table.
No, it should be the same one.
No, we had another version that has the agricultural provision in it.
Is that in the book? Is that what we
It's
have?
not in the book.
Okay.
You've had it at prior hearings.
yeah.
All right. So which
It was
one?
on the table at prior hearings.
So which one would be?
It would be that version only with this paragraph, deer fences on lands in agricultural production.
That you would add? That would be part of that provision?
Correct.
Okay.
So we're good?
So if the board wants to close the public hearing, and then if you want to consider a notice of adoption of that local law,
That's what we'll do.
you need to vote on closing the hearing first.
Yep. So I'll make a motion to close the deer fence law.
Second? Second. In favor?
And I'll make a motion to accept the deer fence law, which is law number
15?
15.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Well, we have to do a roll call.
No, that was just two.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're
That
right.
was in favor, too.
Roll call vote. Trustee Yaz?
Aye.
Trustee Allen?
Nay.
Trustee Irving?
Nay.
Trustee McCann?
Nay.
Trustee Hattrick?
Aye.
So in consideration of that, do you want to go back and revisit this
At another
some
time.
form?
Yep. We shall.
Sure.
We'll go back to it.
Moving ahead, we have no communications to the board, so we have suggested resolutions.
Item 1, resolve the reading of the minutes of the public session 2 of September 25th, 2018, and the special meeting of October 9th, 2018 be dispensed with, and those minutes be accepted as filed by the village administrator. The actions taken at that meeting be and hereby are ratified and approved. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 2, resolve the claims for warrants dated October 11th, 2018, totaling $786,090.06, warrant 8 general fund, $10,607.83, warrant 5 expense trust fund, $62,685.82, warrant 6 capital reserve fund, and the village payrolls for the periods September 14th, 2018 to October 11th, 2018 be audited and approved. Have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second? Second. Discussion? Page 1, All-American Awards, Fire Department, Uniform Equipment, $1,578.10, Animal Medical Research of Centereach, Canine Vaccine and Exams, $1,089.50. Page 3, CAT Production and Video Services for September, $2,305. Coastal Fire Systems, Fire Equipment, $5,544.58. Page 4, Commissioner of Taxation and Finance, MTA Third Quarter Tax, $11,573.64. CSA Employment Benefit Fund, Insurance for October, $29,995.60. Page 5, East Coast Mines and Materials, Dumping Fees, $3,705.60. EMT Accounting Services for September, $115,313. Page 6, Finance Manager Annual Support, $7,998. Firematic Supply, Fire Trucks Repair, $2,441.88. First Presbyterian Church, parking lot lease for October, $3,000. Fleet Pride, Garage Supplies, $1,082.05. Fluid Imagery, Computer Support and Licensing Agreement, $3,437.50. Fowler's Garden Center, Park Supplies, $1,857.83. Next page, GNMD, Fuel Tank Repair, $1,714.20. Gauls PD Uniforms, $3,328.58. Gary Gillespie reimbursement for his Superintendent's Conference, $1,160.55. Granger, flowing over onto page 7, Parks and Highway Supplies, $1,507.76. Hampton Truck and Auto, Fire Department Emergency Lights, $3,222.86. Herrick Hardware Supplies, $1,693.20. Hildreth's 2 benches for the Parks Department, $1,758. Instant Response Technology Support Agreement, $4,124. Jamco Auto Electric Garage Parts, $1,116.07. Johnson Electrical Construction, Traffic Signal Maintenance and Repairs, $8,377.20. Page 10, Mulvisi Equipment, Garage Supplies, $1,917.78. Page 11, Moore Medical Corporation, Ambulance Supplies, $1,180.75. Morgan Auto Supply, Garage Supplies, $2,103.98. Page 12, Nelson Pope and Boys, Consulting Fees for the various boards, $4,817.50. Norsec and Son Karting Fees, $7,616.50. North Shore Golf Cart rentals for the marathon, $1,350. New York State Insurance Company installment, $1,924.78. Page 13, Optimum Cable and Alarm Fees, $1,403.70. Penflex fee for the Fire Department LoSAP, $7,187. Pershing LLC, $415,248. This is the contribution to the fire department LoSAP. We will build 385, and due to the surrender of the life insurance cash surrender values, I added another 35,000 just to help out with the underfunding of the plan. PSEG services for September, $22,665.47. Rapid recovering towing services, $1,200. Red the uniform tailor, police uniforms, $1,317.80. RoboView PD computer repair, $1,630. 17, Strong's Marine Fire Department boat repair, $2,496.69. Page 18, Anthony Tohill, legal fees for September, $2,300. Vanderbilt Quality Fence, the balance for the K9 Kennel, $1,050. Vehicle Tracking Solutions, GPS for September, $1,223.49. Verizon phone bill for September, $3787.74, and Verizon Wireless for September, $2,508.41. Vermeer chipper repair, $1,258.98. Vigilant Solutions license plate reader for PD, $14,480. Village of Southampton transfer to the capital reserve account, $100,000. W&G Services PD AC repair, $2,030.02. WB Mason office supplies, $1,188.84. WES trailer sales repairs to the fire safety trailer, $1,672.56. And Wright National Flood Insurance for the Vets Memorial and the Vets Hall and World War I Memorial, $7,938. Next warrant is the trust warrant, Everguard Surfacing. Balance of the surfacing for the basketball court, $10,150. And the last warrant is the capital reserve, Accurate Fire Equipment Corp. Fire suppression at the firehouse kitchen, $3,800. MTech Consulting Engineers for the ambulance barn, $18,675. Hydronolix Water Rescue Boat, $20,669 for the fire department. Motorola Solutions Ambulance Radio Accessories, $1,875. And Pursuit Auto Emergency Division lights and equipment for the new PD vehicles, $17,666.82. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Item 3, resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the closing of Main Street from Cameron Street to Hampton Road on Saturday, October 13th, 2018, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. for the annual Southampton Fest. Got a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
4, resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the mayor's appointment of Robert Zachary Epley to the Planning Board to fulfill the balance of Steve Lemansky's term ending June 30th, 2019. Got a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Sure.
Item 5,
Thank you.
resolved... Discussion? No? Yeah? You're
I
good?
don't know. You heard what you wanted to hear?
You're supposed to give a speech.
Yeah. Yeah, where's your acceptance
I
speech?
didn't believe I was actually going on the board.
There you
I thought I
go.
was going to get 2 nights a month free.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congrats.
Item 5, resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the attached schedule of budget transfers to eliminate line item overages for the period October 11th, 2018. Got a motion?
Make the motion.
Second?
Second?
Discussion. Item 1, 5,000 out of contingency to 15,000 out of buildings contractual, 15,000 into buildings equipment, and 5,000 into buildings part-time. Second item is 15,000 out of contingency with 15,000 going to police equipment. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 6, resolved that the Board of Trustees approves the following payments from the Capital Reserve Fund, subject to permissive referendum. Accurate Fire Equipment, $3,800 from the Fire Facilities Reserve. Hydronolix, $20,669 from the Fire Equipment Reserve. Motorola Solutions, $1,875 from the Major Equipment Reserve. And Pursuit Auto Emergency, $17,666.82 from the Major Equipment Reserve. Have a motion?
Make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the last one, resolved the Board of Trustees hereby approves the transfer of $425,000 from the Facilities Reserve to the Major Equipment Reserve. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And that's it. No discussion items?
No discussion items, and we have comments from board members. Trustee Skrimsky.
Yeah, I'm good.
Trustee Allen. You gonna do it in Spanish?
Larry Strickland is teaching me Spanish, so I just started.
You told me Spanish a long time ago.
I think it's worthwhile that we look into parking in a broader sense, like Nancy outlined. I do think we need to ask ourselves what we want Southampton to look like. It is concerning to me to see all these cars on the street, and it includes landscapers. And I've spoken to a lot of neighbors, and I said, why does the landscaper park in front of your house versus in your house, and they don't want them on their driveway. But I do think we need to understand what the root cause is of all these cars. Is it because we have bigger houses and we should have enough parking, -1 for every bedroom? Is it people entertaining? What's happening? But,
Well, I'm mostly concerned about the trucks, really, during the day. And I know that a lot of the parking are people who are working for the companies, whether it's, there's some construction going on at the house, and a lot of men will park their vehicles in front of the house instead of on the property. And then you have the landscapers with their double trucks, which is like 2 trucks in a row. And as I said, we have to designate one side of the street that they're allowed to do that during the day to a certain point and not at night, only to organize it. And I know that John Bennett's point is, no, it's against the law. It is against the law, but where are these trucks supposed to go if the people won't allow them on their property? I couldn't have a landscaping truck pull into my property. It's too small. Yet I have a landscaping truck that pulls up and does my landscaping, and very often it's not just a truck, it's a truck and a trailer.
Right. I can't see when I turn onto your road.
I know.
It's dangerous. Go ahead and mow your lawn by yourself then.
No, I'm not going to mow my lawn by myself, Rich.
Get some deer.
Yeah, I have plenty behind me, I can assure you of that. They're ripping down my fence, so, which is not an 8-foot fence, by the way. But anyway, no, we have to, as I said to Evelyn, we have to organize the mess, because it's a mess.
and we've had a lot of people tell us, even though the landscapers park on the streets, they can't, and there are no sidewalks, which I think is a part of the problem. They can't walk with their children in strollers or bike
That's true.
around. And so there are quality of life issues that are stemming from these. And I don't know if it's just a confluence of events, but I'd like to understand it some more. And I am hearing from some residents that somehow the code has changed, or we don't understand how the code has changed, that is really incentivizing people to not park in their homes. And I
No,
think we
the
need
code
to
has not
understand
changed.
that. I don't know for sure, but this
I
is
think
what people are telling me.
I think that we have a growing city mentality where people from the city park on the street. So they come out here, and although they have a driveway, and on the big estates, people usually pull on their own property. It's the trucks that don't, because they don't want them in there. They don't want them messing up their driveways. They want them out on the street. But I also think on the smaller properties, people have a city mentality where they're used to being able to park on the street. And so they're here and they figure, I'm going to park on the street. And our laws are that they're not supposed to park on the street.
Well, the voter can decide, once we figure out what all these, what the reasons are, what we want Southampton to look like.
Right.
If we're fine with everybody parking all over all our streets and,
No, I don't think it's a good thing.
creating, a lot of people have complained to us over this past
know that.
couple of years. And, if that's an issue, then we need to figure out a way to address it. And if it's not an issue and people feel like they want it, to your point, citify it, then that's what they get. But we got to figure out what the reasons are. And to me, I don't think it's really clear yet.
I'm not agreeing with him, but
Yeah.
I'm
No,
just saying, I'm pointing that I think part of it is because they come from a different area where you can park on the street, and so either they don't know, and they just park on the street because it's convenient, or they just figure it's extra parking for them, So,
I mean, it's a combination of all the above, I think, as John pointed.
it is a combination of all
that. And John said, he points out a few examples, John Bennett, people, are improperly using. I think that's the root of it right there. And now how you go back and retroactively enforce that, I don't know. I mean, that's why I said to John, and I still say, knowing the problem's the easy part. We know there's too many damn cars. And traversing around them down the street, we know that. That's why I asked John, where do they go then? If we're going to say they can't park here, it's like the deer fence. All we're doing is displacing them. Where are these vehicles going to go? That's part of the discussion that has to happen. If we just say it's got to go on your property, okay, well, I made changes, perhaps illegally. Are we going to force that person to make those changes so they can accommodate them? I mean, that's what, so as I've always said, putting a sign up for something is, I don't like them because they're ugly, but it better be effective and it better be able to be enforced. So
I'm
the easy
concerned-
problem is there's too many parts. Where do we put them?
I don't like signs either, Rich, but I'm concerned about the safety of our community.
As am I. Everybody is. That's easy.
If you put parking during the day on one side of the street because they're parking anyway, then they're not on both sides.
I have no
Parking is
problem with
both
that. I
sides.
believe, no, once, we've discussed it as an easy remedy. We can just say park on one side of the street, pick a side, which I think would be an extended debate on which side and whose, but yeah, I mean, that's just it.
I
Where do
think
the
it
car,
should be
where do we
uniform
put the
and Easy to
cars?
figure out. That's why I said north-south running road should be a certain street, and east-west, they should be on a different side or
Well, I
the
think
same
it's
side.
something we're going to take a look at.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been looked at.
Any other comments? Well, welcome back.
Thank you. Nice to be back.
Trustee McGann.
Nothing.
You weren't quarantined or anything, were you?
Trustee Hatcher.
I'll make up for Trustee McGann. I've got two. At our most recent department head meeting, Gary made a suggestion about the effectiveness of the fountain that's in Lake Agawam and mentioned that he thinks we ought to add two more, that they haven't had a fish kill. And I know you made the comment that you were going to work on. I was curious, how much does one of those cost?
The bubblers.
They're expensive.
Well,
Yeah. I don't, do you remember what
I
we
think
paid?
they're about between 5,000 and 7,000, but I think his problem was in the middle of the lake getting a homeowner to let them use.
We'd have to use
Power.
electric to one of the houses.
It's not much, it's only a half horsepower pump, so it doesn't draw a lot, but it's just, you can't get anybody to commit.
And I think also people were concerned about the noise of the bubbler. They didn't really
oh
want it.
God in heaven,
Yeah, no.
you're kidding.
Really?
Yeah.
On a lake
what I
as big as that, and you think a bubbler
Some of the
is going to
residents?
keep you up at night?
Well, I don't think it's going to keep you
Have
up.
a double scotch and soda or something. Okay, I just thought it was a good idea.
Crickets and the frogs are louder.
No, it is a great idea.
coming to
and-
your house,
and
Bill.
The ducks.
We need to address it, and we need two more down there.
Here's a more interesting thing. You know, we had a fatal accident on the highway this week, as you're, I'm sure, all aware. And I was kind of fascinated by two things. One, I happened to come over to Village Hall for some reason or another, I think around 9:30, 9:45, and there was hardly anybody at work that day because of the traffic snafu that was caused. And I very friendly with somebody else who got caught in the traffic thing. And the photo that was on 27 East, and this accident took place, I think, around 7 a.m.
Yeah, it
The
took
motorcycle.
place actually right in front of
In front
me
of the
on my way to go.
laundromat.
on my way to go.
Corner of,
Anyhow, I realize when you have a fatality, and we've had this explained to us before, that they've got people that got to come and take all kinds of photographs, and there's insurance and litigation issues and all that sort of thing. How long, now this happened on the north side of the highway, is that correct?
Right in front of the laundry.
And actually, it looked like the wreckage of the motorcycle, which I think was
There was
in the
nothing
picture.
left, really.
Yeah, well, just some scraps, but it looked like it might even be off the road itself, might have been knocked, but in anything, it was on the far north side of the
It
highway.
was all over the place. Don't go by that photograph.
Yeah.
It was
Okay.
scattered. There were parts
Okay.
of many things
Anyhow,
scattered all over the road.
how long was till what hour was the eastbound traffic forbidden to go on the other two eastbound lanes?
They were both closed for the same amount of time, 3 hours.
Until 11:30, I think, Rich, wasn't it?
And because I was at it, and what they did is first they were having westbound coming up and then turning up North McGee past Tuckahoe School and on Sabonic. And then the fire police chief, Tony Stevens, made the call to stop it at where it goes down, damn it, what's the...
Well, they directed me onto McGee. They directed me left onto McGee.
Well, but after they started, but I'm talking about the main traffic heading west on 39, they started sending it over onto Shrubland and Sabonic, like going over that little
Yes,
embankment.
right, yeah.
So keep it completely away. Because again, the reconstructing you're talking about is the troopers have to come out, they have to reconstruct the accident site. So the part of it is for them to arrive and study it. And again, they were, and there's a fatality. So when they arrive and they're
I
done with
understand the
their...
importance of and what they do, but I am kind of mystified that on a 5-lane highway, you've had an accident that has happened on the north side extremity of the 5-lane highway, and it just so happened in the morning when the eastbound traffic is
There was
probably
stuff, my point is,
80
there was stuff in the eastbound as well. And it wasn't,
Hey, what the hell do you think I'm excited about?
It wasn't just
I
motorcycle
understand.
parts.
I understand the westbound traffic is more of a problem because that's where the accident occurred. But you've got even a dividing lane and then 2 lanes, and why the hell they had to shut the whole damn thing off for 3 hours beats the hell out of me. And we've had some other accidents, that one that, well, I won't drag it out, but it went for like 5 hours, and it happened in the summertime, and it strangled this village, and there's been 4 or 5 of them over the years. And I just don't understand why the hell they couldn't have had the eastbound traffic. What has that got to do, or if you had to stop it for a half an hour maximum. But it really tied this place up, and I know where I work, people were coming to work at 10, 10:30, and all that sort of thing, and God knows what it did to the hospital or the school systems or anything like that.
Bill, there were pieces of evidence in the other lanes, that's why.
But how long does it take to take a goddamn picture?
I don't know, it's not my job to answer that. I'm telling you, that's what it takes them to do, and that's what they have to do.
Frankly, I mean, maybe it's a wrong impression, but I think they make too big a deal out of it. Get there, take your pictures, but
I think
they
the person
didn't,
who
you
perished
can't
on a
tell me they
motorcycle,
had
their
to stand.
family takes that a little
That
differently.
accident definitely didn't involve the 2 eastbound lanes, which just happens to be where probably 80% of the traffic is going eastbound at that time of day. And I think you could cause something worse. I know that the other one that I will never forget and have photographs of, and it was unforgivable what they did, in my estimation. And it just, I think, I'd love to get a written report and pictures and to tell us exactly why did they have to do that. They should be able to explain.
No, I'm going to explain it to you again.
No, I want
the one who
should
should have. Well, I was there with the people who was going to answer the report to you.
Okay.
So, and I'll speak on their behalf. I'll take the liberty, if I will. The reason is, one, the study of it takes a certain amount of time. Period. That's non-negotiable because when the team gets out there, it's a specialized team, and they have to assess.
How long did it take them to arrive?
I don't know, but I don't care if it took 2 hours. That is one part of it. The other part of it is the reason why you're going to close all lanes is because, as you said, as everybody's agreed, there are knuckleheads on the road. You're not going to have the first responders knuckleheads on the road.
Oh, knuckleheads.
So what you do is you block off everything.
I was on the road.
You block off everything, so the actual first responders and the police and the study and all the people risking their lives doing the job to find out and study it, some idiot doesn't hit them by keeping a lane open. I know you don't like it. You've made it clear in the past. You referenced the one that happened over by Lobster Inn. That was a friggin' disaster, and there was shit all over the road, both sides. That's why that was closed.
I saw that. But it doesn't take 5 hours to get that shit off the road.
It does, apparently.
And that happened late in the day, and the 2 westbound lanes, you could obviously have used at least one of them, something. That caused a frigging disaster.
If they can open it up, they do.
Well, I think this is an argument.
I know, but I was saying you can't play Monday morning quarterback. It's their call to do, and they do it.
I will tell you, Bill, it was a pretty horrific accident.
Oh, I'm sure it was. Hey, somebody died. I understand that they've got to do certain things, but I don't think you have to shut off the whole East End because, 2 lanes of traffic have an accident on them. Why do they have to? You've got 5 lanes there, and you've got the divider lane, which makes it easy.
Well, there's no divider lane there. It's actually, the road there is only 4 lanes.
There's no 5 lanes there?
I don't think there's a turning lane.
Yes, there's a turn lane. It's 5.
That's what I call
2 and 2.
Oh, that's your 5th lane?
Yeah.
Well, that's what causes a lot of those accidents, is everybody thinks they are a 5th lane.
Well,
but...
If you think I'm soaking wet, but I frankly...
No.
I understand your frustration because I've answered it to you the way I answered to everybody
You
else.
could make a goddamn good play case that somebody who's got a heart attack and is trying to get to the hospital can't get there, or something like that, or some doctor that's supposed to do surgery can't get to work. And I just don't think it has to take that long to take the photographs. I know they have to measure everything and reconstruct the accident, all that stuff. I understand. But I frankly just think they play a base hit into a inside the park home run, and I don't think it's necessary.
Well, whatever. It was not a pleasant thing.
It's your fault for not saying something, so I had to bring out my second one to make up for you.
Thank you, Bill.
You have 3 minutes.
Hey, listen, I feel better. I said it.
Well, but this question does come up with that, and I know nothing about it, so I'm not commenting, except to say, if we were to have evacuation orders, we would have to really...
You're screwed.
Yeah.
Start swimming. You're on the end of an island. You're going nowhere. Get a boat. I mean, that's the direct answer to that. You're screwed.
There is no evacuation.
There is no evacuation. We're in the end.
But speaking of evacuation orders, we all should really
Be prepared.
think about the poor individuals down there in the Panhandle, because, we're a coastal community as they are, and I really have tremendous feelings for them and what they've gone through, and I just, when the hurricane season comes here, I sit and go, oh, no, here we go again, because...
Sounds like you believe in global warming.
No, I believe in Mother Nature, and she can be pretty stringent when she wants to be.
The president doesn't believe in it.
Obviously that
Another whole section.
that community really hit it, and it's a shame. So our hearts go out for them. Then on a real positive note, although we didn't do it today, we were thinking of getting the pictures up there at the basketball court. The basketball court up at the police department is looking real good. Have you seen it? And the striping's in, court's in, backboards are in, clear backboards. I think they're adjustable.
Those are some backboards.
Those are some backboards. You're 100% right.
Welcome to Saddam Village.
Some backboards, there's even bench seating up there. I mean,
Next to lights.
Yeah.
Announcing booth.
I was pretty impressed. So we're going to do a opening up there at some point when we get some decent weather, and hopefully the press will come too. Then, on a real big note, we'd really be terrible if we didn't mention it, is Southampton Fest is coming this weekend. And I've got to thank everybody that's worked on this, because you guys have been working since last year, I think, on this. And, there's all sorts of events. It starts Friday night with a kickoff with the Rotary Club. Then there's all sorts of kids events on Saturday, and Agawam Park on Saturday, and on Sunday, 11 to 5, and then, of course, and I even heard it on a couple of radio stations, the famous clam chowder cook-off, I guess it's been called, on who's the best chowder person, and I've even had people who make the chowder call me and go, how do they judge us anyway? They're starting to get really particular about it, so.
Seriously.
Great event. We'll bring a lot of people into the village, and I thank everybody that's worked so hard on it. You have great brochures, great signage. Hopefully it's going to be good weather. I'm a little upset this hurricane's called Michael.
Monster Mike. I wasn't going to don't worry, I wasn't going to let the evening go without saying that. But you brought it up.
You're not a windbag. Don't.
Yeah. I think maybe I had a little bit of him.
Just have to make up for it this weekend, that's all.
Yeah, that's right. So in any event, we have some great things in the village, and we have some issues in the village, but we're going to work them all out, I'm sure, eventually. And the one other thing that we had, which last night, was a going away party for John Forster, and it was great. It was a good party. There was lots of humor. It was great seeing all the people that were in the village, from builders to village employees, and everybody was giving you a little bit to John, I think, you know.
It was a little bit of a roast for John. And believe me, he deserved it.
And he loved it, too.
He loved
He loved it.
Yeah,
Every minute of it.
he ate it up,
I got
so.
there late to it, but yeah, it was a good crowd.
It's going to be sad to see him leave. You know, he was not only a building inspector, but he was a little bit of a character in the village, and I know that he used to stay up there late in the evenings, and he'd come down, and Julie would be in her office working away, and he'd pull the old light switch off.
Lightning strike.
Yeah, and scare everybody whenever he could. So, you know, John, we're certainly going to miss your humor, that's for sure. And thank you for your service. And that's all I have.
Can I just say one thing? I'm sorry.
Sure,
I
absolutely.
did forget to mention it on something. So I did have something. You know, we've been brought into this discussion many times, but I don't know if anybody's aware of, you know, there's been some seemingly positive news on the helicopter route, storm front. Because we haven't, thankfully, hasn't been in front of us in a while, but there's been obviously many groups, the North Fork, the North Shore, and so forth, against the helicopter routes coming from Manhattan and so forth. So, you know, and Congressman Zeldin had brought up something in the past, the FAA shot it down. So due to the ultra diligence and vigilance of these civic groups on the North Fork and other places, they have persisted with letter writing, and with that group, their persistence, and Congressman Zeldin, they've actually got some provisions put forth. I believe it was going up to be signed or not, but that's a good step in the right final direction.
It's a great step, yeah.
Because that's the thing. In addition to our traffic concerns and other things, we all know we hear that as far as the aerial noise and the aerial traffic. So, so again, if people aren't aware of that, it was in the papers. It's been announced that there's some positive, which is good for us, because that means we won't hear as much of it going forward either. So, just wanted to mention that.
No, that's a very good thing. That hopefully it will get signed and done, and we'll get some relief.
Sometimes persistence pays off.
Yeah, it does. So moving ahead here, we have the second public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who has a comment? With that, I make a motion to adjourn to executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.